Namaskar and welcome to StudyIQ. I am your friend Rahul Saigaonkar. The agenda for today's discussion is connected with Indian polity, where we are going to discuss about electoral funding or political funding in India. Our prime focus would be on understanding the electoral bond scheme and issues connected with it. Why are we discussing this? Because recently the Supreme Court has announced that they are going to hear the petitions which are connected with electoral bond scheme. This scheme has been challenged in multiple petitions, and now the Supreme Court has said that they are going to create a constitutional bench, and that is going to hear this issue of electoral bond scheme and its validity. In this video lecture, we are going to understand this entire issue of electoral funding comprehensively. Please remember that I'll not be discussing what has been happening since 1950. For this discussion, we are creating a dividing line. We are trying to understand this electoral bond scheme, which started from 2018. So what we are going to understand is what was the scenario before 2018 and what is the scenario now after 2018 and how things are better. And if things are better, why electoral bond schemes are being challenged. So we'll do a critical analysis of the entire electoral bond scheme. At the end of the discussion, we'll also try to understand what can we expect from this constitutional bench. That would be rather speculative. This is the entire domain of our discussion. And to put a cautionary note, this is going to be a little lengthy discussion. All right, let's begin our discussion with a question. Transparency and openness in political funding is a sine qua non for free and fair elections. In light of above statement, critically analyze. Remember, you have to critically analyze to what extent the electoral bond scheme 2018 has improved transparency in political funding in India. You will get very good fodder or very good content to attempt this question in the current video lecture. To get to know all those things, stay with me till the very end. All right, let's begin. But for all the UPSC civil services aspirants, StudyIQ is announcing P2I batch, prelims to interview batch number 2. After overwhelming response for batch number 1, we are starting a batch number 2 which begins from 23rd October. And if you are planning to prepare for UPSC civil services examination, you will not find a better program than the P2I, because this is the most wholesome program, the most comprehensive program, where we will be hand-holding you through prelims, through mains, through interview, all the stages. The program is quite flexible in terms of your preparation, in terms of content delivery, as well as to plan according to your schedule. This would be ideal for the students who are in the third year, final year, for working women, for working personnel, for homemakers, etc. Just go to our website, pick out the plan which suits you, and you do know StudyIQ's motto is to provide education at affordable prices. The entire course price, it begins with only 23,999. Just visit the website, you'll get all the details. Enroll now. I'll see you in the class. All right, let's begin our discussion regarding the electoral bond scheme. Now, you do understand electoral bonds are connected with political funding or electoral funding. Now, in any political system, for that matter, leave India, you talk about any other country, if it has a political system where there are political parties involved, those political parties, they need money to run their activities. Now, you do understand, under Indian Constitution, under Article 19, we have freedom to form our associations. That means I can form my political party. Now, imagine if I am the only one candidate who's contesting for the party, probably if I have crores of money, then I can fund myself. But if it's a big political party, money is needed. So you need contribution, you need to crowdsource the funding or money for elections, because a political party, it has a lot of importance in any political setup. They create programs, they have to connect with people, they run their functionaries, and ultimately they have to connect with people. First of all, get feedback from people, get inputs from people, and connect their policies with the people. Now, for all these things, you need money, isn't it? You need money. Now, question comes up, sir, I create a political party, register a political party, and how can I get contribution, right? These contribution can be from individuals. Any person who supports a political party, they can support individuals or a group of individuals or an organization of individuals. Yes, right? So individuals can directly contribute to the political parties. Political parties can also get huge amount of contributions from corporate entities, because corporate entities, they make big bucks, so they can contribute to the political party, and it might be, say, some sort of, I would say, a back channel or a backdoor quid pro quo, that funding would be provided for a political party. If the political party comes into power, then they can bring certain rules and regulations which would be helpful for corporates. This happens everywhere. In United States, there is an open lobbying or open campaign for funding which runs, right? So I would say not exactly similar thing, but in India also, political parties, they rely on their cadre, they rely on their people for funding, they rely on corporates for their funding. There is another avenue as well of state funding. Although I have mentioned this in red, in India, we do not have state funding. I wouldn't say we have complete state funding. That means we do not have any monetary state funding. There is no monetary state funding. Yes, to certain extent, I would say there is partial kind of funding from the state, especially for political parties who are recognized. You do understand the Election Commission of India, it recognizes the political parties as state parties and national parties. When they are recognized, they get certain benefits. They do not get money directly, of course. They do not get money directly, but they do get benefits, say in terms of income tax exemption, in terms of property from the state for creating their offices, the properties at lower rates. They get airtime on Doordarshan, All India Radio. They get electoral rolls from the Election Commission of India, 2 sets directly. So these are some sort of help, or this is some sort of help from the state towards political party. But remember, majorly in India, the political parties, they rely on individuals and corporate entities for their funding. All right, this is the setup. Now, if you look at what was exactly before 2018, now I'm going to talk about more recent things. Let's not go too much into history, or let's not talk about 2 or 3 decades before, but let's talk about recent times. Before 2018, I would say from the beginning of 21st century, what has been happening. What happened in 2018? The electoral bond scheme came, and what is the situation as of now? See, before 2018, before the electoral bond scheme came up, what were the statutory provisions under which contributions could be given to political parties? Now, please remember, for all the UPSC civil service aspirants, state funding of political parties, that itself becomes a standalone topic for you to prepare, because there are pros and cons of that I am not covering in today's discussion, but I would expect aspirants to prepare for this as well. Should state funding of political parties be proceeded with? Because there have been different committees, commissions. Say, for example, the Indrajit Gupta committee from 1998, it recommended some sort of partial funding. The same was, I would say, reiterated or supported by different law commission reports. The NCRWC, the second ARC, many have recommended for some sort of partial state funding. But you need to know about the pros and cons of that. But prepare that on your own, or else I'll try to cover that in some other discussion. So what I was discussing here was, how does the contribution come from individuals and corporates? What are the statutory provisions? Now, in India, under the RP Act, Representation of People Act 1951, I would say Section 29A, Section 29B, and Section 29C, they deal with these contributions. Section 29A, who can get this contribution? Political parties. There has been some change in that also. We'll talk about that. But predominantly, Section 29B, it says that political parties can accept voluntary contribution. Very important, voluntary, no forced contribution. Section 29C, it suggests that before 2018, political parties can get donations from people, from individuals, and if they get anything above 20,000 rupees, they have to declare it. That means political contributions, funding more than 20,000 rupees, it was supposed to be declared every year in their IT returns. Again, a report shall go to the ECI, etc. But if say the contribution is below 20,000 rupees, there is no need to report. And there would be anonymity maintained, because it is a very small amount that I don't keep a receipt. Say, for example, if I'm a political party and if I'm getting anything less than 20,000 rupees, I say I don't keep a receipt of that. I don't know who gave it. So there is no reporting as well. All right? And you do understand, in India, elections are a costly affair. In 2019, more than 50,000 crore rupees were spent, making it one of the costliest elections in the Indian political history. All right. So this was before 2018. Now, apart from that, you do understand, why do people contribute? One, they want to have affiliation with a political party. They want to show their support to the political party. Apart from that, they also get tax exemption under the Section 80 GGC. Also, the political parties which gain from this contribution, they are also exempt from IT income, because it is 100% exempt, especially from house property, from income from other sources, capital gains, etc. So they are also exempt. So these are some statutory provisions. From individuals under RPA, and for the corporates, you do know corporates could also contribute. Before 2018, they were governed by section 182. Now under this, please remember, a government company cannot give any contribution. A private company which is young, basically, which is not older than 3 years, they cannot make any contribution. So only private companies which are registered under the Companies Act 2013, they can donate to any political party which they want. However, before 2018, there was a cap. Now what was the cap? The corporates which are registered and which are older than 3 years, they can donate up to 7.5% of their average profits. Remember, if they make 100 rupees net profits in the last 3 years, then they could donate only 7.5 rupees basically. So 7.5% of their net average profits for the last 3 years. All right, this was a limit. Now, when I say cap, this is basically a limit on spending by the corporates. And of course, in the Company Act itself, it is highlighted that if you are making a contribution, that contribution must show in your profit and loss account, and it should also be approved by your board of directors. That's quite clear. So this was the standing in 2018. Now you're thinking, sir, what are the problems here? I want to understand what are the issues here. From the company's perspective, I think it sounds good. There is a limit on the corporates, because I don't want corporates to fund completely for the political parties, or else we will move towards that bad concept of crony capitalism. Yes, but I do have certain issues with this 20,000 rupees, sir, right? Because if the amount is below 20,000 rupees, the political parties are not supposed to show anything. It's just income from some other source where contribution have come from, say, lakhs of people below 20,000 rupees. All right. So this is one of the issues. And this was a problem. Because if you look at the numbers, black money in the Indian electoral funding was to the tune of 7,833 crore. This was highlighted by the Association for Democratic Reforms in 2017 itself. They suggested that in the 10 years from 2004 to 2014, 2004-5 to 2014-15, different political parties, they suggested, or they gave their accounts to the ECI, that we have received this much of funding from people to the tune of 7,833, okay, and we cannot give you source of this. And this number for all political parties together was close to 70%. That means 70% of the money that is with political parties, they cannot tell where that has come from. It might be, say, black money. It might be money which is tainted. I don't know from where is it coming. And black money is quite prominent in elections in India. This was the problem. I can give you example of many political parties. No political parties is so called, that Hindi idiom called doodh ka dhula, right? Because every political party, they used this particular norm not to show who gave contribution or how much contribution did come from people. For example, say BJP showed lakhs of money or crores of money came through contribution, through small contribution. In fact, ADR specifically highlighted the Trinamool Congress, which had almost 90% of its funding coming from smaller amounts, less than 20,000. There is no need to report that. So this was a problem, because I want to know the source. Where is it coming from? Isn't it? See, if any individual is supporting, very fine, but I need the source where exactly it's coming from, or else it's black money. Now, to resolve this issue, what happened in 2018 was the government came up with this electoral bond scheme. It was announced in 2017 itself during the budget, and in 2018 all the nitty-gritties were finalized, and the electoral bond scheme came. The so-called intention of the scheme was to cleanse the system of political funding, in India. Now, this scheme was defended very passionately by the then finance minister. It was Mr. Arun Jaitley. Now, he had suggested that India is a very large democracy. Yes, we have political parties. Political parties need money. They need money to do a lot of things. They have to run their functioning. They have to give staff salaries, traveling expenses, establishment costs, etc. So overall, they do need money. Yes. But this money should come from transparent sources. Now, this was highlighted. He gave a very passionate speech. And along with it, he said that we are bringing electoral bond scheme to cleanse the electoral funding in India. So what would happen right now is, first of all, I will start a scheme of electoral bonds through which clean money would come for the political funding. All right. So one needs to understand that as of today, from 2018, from January 2018, what are the norms, or how can I give contribution? Please remember, you can still give contribution without the electoral bond also. All the aspirants, all the viewers, they have to understand that if somebody wants to make a contribution, it's not necessary that they can do only through the electoral bond itself. Please remember, you can do individually also. A person can give individually. Even I would say corporates can also give it. But now the cap is 2,000 rupees. That means political parties, if they receive anything above 2,000 rupees, that must be reported with the Election Commission of India. Where has it come from? Who has given it? It must be reported. Now, if they do not report it, then there can be fines and penalties under the IT Act, and ECI can also impose certain fines, penalties. Okay, that's the basic norm. So what has happened after this electoral bond scheme? First thing that has changed is Section 29C. Under Section 29C, earlier the number was 20,000. Now the number is 2,000 rupees. That means any contribution which exceeds above 2,000, that has to be reported. That means the political parties, they have to keep a record of any contribution where the amount is more than 2,000 rupees. And every year in the IT returns, they have to give all the details. Now, apart from that, this electoral bond scheme, it also brought a subtle change in Section 182 of Companies Act. Now, this Section 182 was amended. All the other provisions were same. That means a government company cannot fund, cannot give contribution. A company which is younger than 3 years, they cannot contribute to any political party. The only thing that was removed was the limit. Now, you do understand the earlier limit was 7.5% of net profits for the last 3 years. Now, there is no limit, no restriction. Of course, now you do understand there is another act which also regulates this. That is the FICRA, that is Foreign Contribution Regulation Act. Under that, foreign companies, they cannot give any contribution. You do understand. All right. So under FICRA also, no contribution should come from foreign entities. But Indian companies, domestic companies which are registered under Companies Act, they can now give any amount of money to the political parties which are defined under Section 29A through the electoral bond scheme. All right. Now this is the setup. So what exactly is this electoral bond scheme? Please remember, I'm reiterating. Now, today, if I have to fund a political party, I can give any amount of money, no issues. I can directly go, I can give cash, I can give check, I can give whatever I want. Through cash, through check, it's very easy. I can give anything. But if it is about 2,000 rupees, the political party must keep the track of it. Okay. But the catch is with electoral bond. Now, what is this electoral bond? Now, remember, this electoral bond is like a promissory note. It's like a promissory note. That means, now, if I have to fund a political party, whichever political party, XYZ, so I go to a bank, I pay from my account that I want to take one electoral bond, and that electoral bond would be named on whichever political party that I'm going to give it to. That political party would be promised that this has been pledged to you by this person from their account. That's the basic idea. Now, please remember, this electoral bond, it is like an instrument which does not have my details. That means the buyer or payee is not mentioned. Rahul is not mentioned on it. But of course, the political party to which it goes, it is mentioned. That means I take the electoral bond, I give it to the political party. So political party is the owner of that particular bond, and they can simply go and encash it. That is the basic idea. All right. Now, one of the intentions in the speech which was highlighted here by the then finance minister was that there has to be some sort of anonymity, especially when it comes to corporate donors. Now, what was argued here was that if there is no anonymity with respect to, say, people who are who are say contributing to one political party, what might happen? That people will know that Rahul sir has supported party X, or he has given funding to party X, but party Y has come into power. Now, will party Y take certain steps against him, or will they try to harass him, etc.? Now, this was suggested as one of the reasons for this anonymity, that the payer or the buyer's name would not be there. This basically allows anybody to buy electoral bonds. Individuals or the corporates, they can buy the electoral bonds. There would be no mention about their name. Okay, and the political party which has it, or to which they have been given, they can encash it. Now, what can be the amount? The amount can be as low as 1,000 rupees. You can get a bond of 1,000 rupees, 10,000 rupees, 1 lakh, 10 lakh. It can go up to 1 crore rupees. It can go up to 1 crore rupees. And you can simply give it to political party of your choice. Okay, that's the basic idea. Now, apart from this, there are certain other clauses. Now, whenever the purchaser or buyer, say if I have purchased, I have to give all my KYC norms, because first of all, it has to go from my account only. Once money is debited from my account, the bond would be given, and I can only get it at designated banks only. Right now, only State Bank of India has been given powers. There are 29 designated state banks of India in different cities from where electoral bonds can be purchased. Okay, and with the bank, all the data is there. With the bank, all the data is there. With the political parties, they don't know who has given it, but they have a bond. They have money, which they can encash. Again, once the bond is given, that bond has to be encashed within 15 days. So if I give it to the political party has to get it encashed within 10 days. Apart from that, when can I buy a bond? So you are thinking now, sir, this is quite amazing. Now I want to buy an electoral bond and I want to give it to, say, some political party that I am supporting. When can you buy? You can buy it four times in a year. For the first 10 days in the month of January, in the month of April, in the month of July, and in the month of October. So totally it would run for 40 days approximately: January, April, July, October, or anything specified by central government. When I say central government, the power is with the finance ministry. In an election year, when I talk about election year, general election to the Lok Sabha, in that particular year, additional 30 days can be allotted by the central government to buy the electoral bonds. Okay, to buy the electoral bonds. So what happens now? The bond, again, how the political parties will encash it, they will also encash directly into their bank account, specified bank account. That bank account shall be registered with the Election Commission of India as well. Okay, apart from that, there is no limit on anybody, there is no limit on anyone in terms of how many electoral bonds one wants to buy. Of course, electoral bonds, when you buy, they are also exempt from IT taxation under the section 80 GGC. Yes. Apart from that, if the political party, imagine they forget to encash the bond, generally that does not happen, but if they forget to encash the bond, then the bond after 15 days will go to Prime Minister Relief Fund. Now, till now, I would say less than 1% of the bonds have gone into PMRF. So most of the funding that has gone to the political parties, they have encashed it. All right. So I hope you do understand the nuances, what has happened before and what has happened now. All right. Now you have option of electoral bond, or you can go individually also. That is not an issue. Okay. But now you are thinking, sir, this looks fine. Everything looks fine with this electoral bond scheme. Then why now it has gone to courts? It's very fine. Everything is now digital. That means whoever is buying, they have the KYC norms, not with the government, not with the people, but with SBI for sure. Yes. And I can do it for a specified amount of time. The specific time has been allotted. And to the political parties also, everything looks very decent. Then what is the issue? Let's talk about the issues. The first issue is, I would say, the root of this electoral bond scheme itself. Right? There is a entire debate from Gandhi about ends and means. Right? Means, or if you want to achieve certain end, the means also should be good. But the way electoral bond scheme started, it started from the Finance Act 2007, and you do understand Finance Act means it came through the budget. Finance bill would be a money bill. And if it is a money bill, that means the Rajya Sabha will have limited powers. And I'm talking about the year 2017-18, where the NDA government, NDA 1, which was ruling, they did not have requisite numbers, I would say, in Rajya Sabha. Okay. So it was pushed through as a money bill, first thing. And along with bringing the electoral bond scheme, there were some other acts also which were amended. Of course, the FICRA, or the Foreign Contribution Regulation Act, or the International Contribution Control Act, that would be amended. RPA was amended. RPA section 29A, section 29C was amended. Income Tax Act was again amended appropriately. Companies Act was amended. In Companies Act section 182 was amended. All right. Now, once this was done, multiple NGOs and different political parties, they filed petitions against the electoral bond scheme itself, its validity. Now, you do understand there is already a multitude of petitions which are questioning the root of finance bill or money bill itself. In fact, just now I told you at the beginning of the discussion that the electoral bond scheme is going to be looked through constitutional bench. And a similar announcement, it came hardly, I would say, 15-20 days back, where the judiciary has announced that they are going to also look into the issue of money bill, which is going to be really, really complicated, probably some sort of guidelines for money bill, but we don't know what will happen. We'll keep an eye on that. So this was challenged. Now, this was challenged way back in 2018 itself. In 2019, just before the general elections, the Supreme Court had also passed an interim order, and in that interim order, it sought inputs from the Election Commission of India. It sought inputs from the Association for Democratic Reforms through sealed covers, through sealed envelopes, regarding who is eligible for all these things, and which political parties are getting what, which political parties should be eligible, etc. So all those sealed cover data was with the Supreme Court. And now these petitions are going to be listened, and the final hearing or final verdict would be given by a constitutional bench. So the first thing is passage through Finance Act. Apart from that, there are certain other things which we need to look at. Since 2018, what has been the performance, or what has been the outcome of this electoral bond scheme? My question would be, has it led to reduced, I would say, black money funding? Is there transparency, accountability as of now? Let's look at that. Since 2018, the amount of money every year that has come, it is mentioned here. In 2018, more than 1,000 crore was given to different political parties through electoral bonds, through individuals, through corporates. The highest till now has come, of course, in the election year 2019, more than 5,000 crores. And later on, it will of course reduce. In 2020, 367 crore, year of COVID-19. Later on, 1,500 crores and 1,200 crores. So overall, in the 19 tranches, when I say tranche, in different 19 months or around 190 days on which electoral bonds can be bought, on those days, the number of funding, or the amount of funding that has come, is close to 9,208 crore rupees. Huge amount, right? More than $1 billion. More than $1 billion. Now, question is, sir, I want to dissect this data further, because I want to know who got the maximum from 2018. Now, here comes the catch. This is the pie chart of the contributions that have gone to the political parties through the electoral bonds since 2018. This data is till 2022, March 2022 end, basically I can say. Okay, so the largest chunk of electoral bond funding, it has gone to BJP, more than 5,200 crores. All right, that this makes it more than 57% has gone to BJP. At the second number, of course, no prizes for guessing, it is Congress, which has garnered 964 crore contribution from its supporters. Next is All India Trinamool Congress, 767 crores, and many others, more than 24 regional parties, national parties including, they have got funding through the electoral bond scheme. But the largest chunk has come to the BJP. Now, if we look more closely, you will get some surprising data. The argument at the beginning of the electoral bond scheme, it came out that it shall become easy for everybody to support their political party, and without people knowing who is supporting them. The argument was that common man can fund a political party very, very transparently without having that danger. Say, for example, I am not a corporate. I simply run a grocery store. I simply run a grocery store and I want to support some political party. I support that political party. But if some other political party comes into power, I don't want that party to know, okay, I am supporting this or them, because I don't want some repercussions later on. So that was one of the arguments, right? Now, if you look at the data, this is not the data of 19 tranches, but 17 tranches. If you look at the data, you will realize the maximum amount of money and the maximum amount of bonds that have come, they have been from the bonds which have been above 1 crore rupees. Huge numbers, isn't it? Huge numbers. Now, by simple common sense, I have a question. Can an individual give or fund through the electoral bond to a political party up to a tune of 1 crore rupees? Maybe if they are ultra high net worth individuals, but I don't think a common man would buy an electoral bond of 1 crore rupees and give it to the political party, or the funding of 1 crore rupees electoral bond would go. Where has this gone from? Probably from the corporates, isn't it? So the argument that for a common man it would be helpful, that is a myth. That is a myth. In fact, if you look at the numbers, say, I would say a common man, probably they might give bigger contributions, say around 1,000, 10,000, 1 lakh. Now, if you look at this particular number, the number of electoral bonds of 1,000 rupees till 2022 were hardly 50. Number of electoral bonds of 10,000 were 93, and of 1 lakh were 1,914. This clearly busts the myth that common man is buying these electoral bonds, I would say, largely. All right. Now, apart from this, when you dissect a little more, electoral bonds, do they violate my right to know, my right to information? Because right now, fundamentally, what has happened to this electoral bond is, if an electoral bond is given to a political party, there is no need of reporting. Reporting is not required by the political party for any amount of electoral bonds. Why? The government argues that we have everything transparent. Everything is right now, through trail by trail, we know what has happened, right? But that is the biggest issue. Where is my right to know? I want to understand where the funding for a political party has come from. Can I file an RTI? No. Can I file RTI with EC, Election Commission of India? They do not have the data, because the political parties they don't need to report. Can I file an RTI with the political party? No, they do not come under the public authorities apparently. Can I file, say, an RTI somewhere else, say to the SBI? Again, probably they won't give me data, right? So right now there are unreasonable and irrational restrictions that are put on the electoral bond. And why I'm arguing this particular point, that you might ask, sir, this argument is a little flawed, because the fundamental reason was that they should not know who has funded. But the problem is, the government can know anytime, because government can seek that data from designated SBI branches, and they shall know who has funded whom, or who have given electoral bonds to one particular party. Apparently there was a huge conspiracy also over that. There were news snippets, especially a couple of years back, with respect to electoral bonds. It was suggested that every electoral bond, it has some sort of a alphanumeric mark right on their edges, which is not visible directly. It is visible under ultraviolet light. Now, using this, apparently one can assess, or one can know from where the money has come. Again, it was there were reports of that. Okay, I have not added that point here. Now, apart from this right to know, there are some issues. When the electoral bond scheme was being brought, there were so many reservations which were highlighted. Reservations from the government wings, reservation from government organization. RBI was against the electoral bond scheme. I wouldn't say against, but they had raised their own apprehensions regarding that. The Election Commission of India had also raised their apprehensions. In fact, ECI categorically had said that any donation that is received by a political party through electoral bond, there is no need of reporting this. Or doesn't this sound a little absurd? It sounds, right? They said it is quite a retrograde step in today's era of transparency and openness. Not just the Election Commission of India or RBI, even government bodies like government law ministry itself had raised its apprehensions with respect to this. It was also said that the law commission had also highlighted or given its pointers against the electoral bond scheme, although the government in its reply in the parliament itself had suggested that there were no reservations from the law commission of India. So many people are already against that, and most of the apprehensions, most of the riders that were suggested by these organizations, agencies, they were neglected. They highlighted that through the electoral bonds there is a possibility of money laundering, there is a possibility of black money entering into a country. For instance, say contribution from corporates. As I showed you, a large amount of money is coming from these corporates, and today in India there are many companies older than 3 years. They have been registered. I can say that if a shell company is created specifically for giving electoral bonds, it will stay for more than 3 years and probably getting funding from somewhere else and buying electoral bonds continuously and funding a political party. Isn't it possible? That is. And that is what was highlighted by RBI and other agencies, which was neglected. Apart from that, there is a possibility of misuse by the ruling dispensation itself. For example, the notification regarding the electoral bond scheme and its timing is generally given by the Ministry of Finance. Now, largely, they have not misused it many times, but sometimes it has happened. For example, especially during the state elections. I can give example of the Bihar Assembly elections. During the Bihar Assembly elections in 2020, again, one of the reasons can be attributed to COVID-19, but there was no issuance of electoral bond schemes during April or July. Later on during October, they were issued in 2020. So all these notifications, they lie with the finance ministry itself, and there is a chance or a possibility of misuse. For example, during the 2019 elections, general elections, the finance ministry had fixed a total period of 45 days for issuing bonds apart from the standard, right? There were days which were given in March, April and May to buy the electoral bonds, so they have the power, they have the power to issue it for extra 30 days during an election year, and which we might see probably in 2024 as well. But the timing of that is something which is questionable largely. All right. Apart from that, there can be one more question on electoral bond scheme. Is it discriminative? Why? Because it says that only those political parties which have 1% vote share in Lok Sabha, or which have gained 1% vote share in Lok Sabha or the state assembly elections, they shall be eligible for the scheme. Now question mark comes, who has this list? An RTI was filed with the Election Commission of India way back in 2019 itself. The ECI said we do not have any such list. We do not have any such list. Funny, isn't it? Till 2022, there was no list of which political parties are eligible for this. Of course, many national parties, state parties, they would be eligible because this 1% vote share, again, it has to be finally certified by the Election Commission of India only. So now there is a list, but there is a chance of misuse. Say, for example, you create a political party, you get 1% vote share in one of the elections, you are now listed. After that, you have mostly become defunct. There are many political parties in India. You do not believe that in India there are more than 2,000 political parties which are active. In fact, if you ask me how many registered, I can easily say, even if I go for a conservative number, more than 4,000 political parties which are registered right from the beginning. So there is a chance of misuse here. There is a issue of discrimination as well, chance of misuse by political parties which are rather defunct. So these are all the issues which have been highlighted. In fact, one of the petitioners, Association for Democratic Reforms, they have continuously argued through their counsel with respect to all these pointers, and they are the ones who are batting to reform the electoral bond scheme, or I would say to scrap the electoral bond scheme. And because of this, recently the Supreme Court has said that we are going to look at this electoral bond scheme through a constitutional bench. So what can we expect? Whenever there's a hearing, we'll keep an eye on that. What can be expected? The worst would be, I would say, the electoral bond scheme may be held unconstitutional, it may be scrapped. But again, we would be reverting back to something before 2018. That does not make sense properly, because again, a contribution less than 20,000, there is a lot of chance of misuse through the black money. Uh, a better estimation or a better speculation here would be that the changes would be brought into electoral bond scheme maybe through the intervention of judiciary. What kind of changes we can expect? We can expect changes, especially that everybody should have a right to know which political party is getting money from whom. That must be a right to know. It must be a right to information. Apart from that, compulsory reporting of even the electoral bond scheme contribution must come. Right now, what happens is, if you get money, if a political party gets money from the electoral bond contribution, no need to report it. So probably reporting might come. And if they do not follow this, penalties can also be defined, or penalties can be brought. Apart from that, there has to be an audit itself of the scheme, isn't it? Because every taxpayer's money is involved. Now, do you understand there is SBI involved here? SBI means it's a nationalized bank, right? That is also getting commission from running this the electoral bond scheme, and that commission, etc., is paid through the taxpayers' money, isn't it? So there has to be some sort of audit of the scheme itself, isn't it? I'm not telling that the CAG should do it, but a CAG supervised independent entity can go for audit of the electoral bond scheme, something like that, or say bring the electoral bond scheme data under RTI, even if it is connected with political party. So certain things might come up. We might anticipate some sort of landmark changes here, but there is bound to be a discussion, especially with respect to the political funding in our country. The landscape of electoral funding might change drastically in the coming months. As and when that happens, we will have a discussion on Study IQ. But I hope that this was a fruitful session for you. This was a fruitful session for you, and as I told you, it would be a little lengthy, but it was again a comprehensive one. I hope that you have understood everything and you have got enough fodder to attempt an answer for the question that we began with. All right. If there is any update, we'll have a discussion again on Study IQ. Thank you for watching this. And again, if you have liked this, if you have any queries, any doubts, you can always follow me on this particular ID @RahulSai222. You can message me on IG. I do respond on weekends. Thank you again. Jai Hind.